Welcome to Pensar Basketball. Today we are talking about the Toronto Raptors draft prospects. And of course, Toronto Raptors, double whammy. They kind of moved down from 16 to 19. That's one. And then they lose their top 10-ish pick, and that's two. And so we are left admiring the heap of afterthoughts in the draft. Or are we? Is this draft kind of deep? Is this draft kind of interesting when it gets a little bit later? I do want to address something that just happened in the chat here, just very briefly, before we get into this. I'm gonna break it down to three tiers. Basically, we're gonna talk about three types of players. We're gonna talk about two types of bigs, so different variation of bigs. One, I would say you can call them not so big bigs, right? Bigs who don't have a lot of rim protection, but maybe offer other things that are valuable, like playmaking, switchability, etc. We are going to talk about typical rim protectors because this is something that is really lacking from the Raptors roster, and I don't believe in necessarily drafting for fit, but it seems to be a bit of a strength in this draft. And then we're going to talk about shot creators off the bench. This is going to be really, these are three very valuable player types in the NBA, apart from movement shooters, big wings, creators, shot creators, stretch bigs. These are some of the most valuable archetypes in the NBA. There's no like lumbering, slow, low post player that we're trying to draft here. I'm not talking about Zach Edey. I'm also not going to talk about Yves Missi because despite the fact that a lot of mock drafts have him ranked pretty high or pretty low, I believe he's going to go high. I believe he's going to go well above where the Raptors are going to be picking, but I'll just lay it out there right now. If Yves Missi is there at 19 and the Raptors do not pick him and we're having a live stream, you're going to see me have a meltdown on a live. That dude should not be passed up on. I'll address something that just happened in the comments here because it sucks. It sucks, right? I mean, I don't like banning people, but there was a lot of talk about I can't even see the comments anymore because I guess I deleted his comments. But there was someone slow mo. I believe he's been commenting for a very long time. I've never had any issues, but kept talking about how the WNBA is trash and it's unwatchable. The comment that drew my ire is that he said that it was lower level basketball than Canadian boys high school, which is insulting, and quite frankly, it is ridiculous and so stupid. Um, I wish I hadn't banned him so that I could invite him to play one of the WNBA players who was cut and is not even on a roster. And I would bet money that if that player was of sufficient physical size, as in if Slow-Mo is 6 feet and she was 6 feet, that she would probably beat him 100-0. These women are pretty good at basketball, and you can't appreciate that because you have a small brain. I don't know what else to say. Anyways, let's talk about that. It sucks, you lose a channel community member over a comment like that. But it's I think a lot of people have had to fight very, very hard to eradicate commentary like that. And personally, I find it's not opinionated. It's just bigoted. It's stupid. It comes from a place that is, there's certain dissenting opinions are fine. You can think that you can think it's not your cup of tea. I'm not asking you to necessarily support the WNBA. I'm not even asking you to support the Toronto Raptors. I don't care what you support, but keep it above the belt, right? Like let's keep it respectful, right? No send Europeans back to Europe stuff. No send Pascal back to Africa stuff. Let's keep that stuff out. Okay, that stuff crosses the line. It's stupid. I'm not really a fan of the WNBA. I don't watch WNBA games. I don't want to watch WNBA. That's fine. That's fine. You don't have to watch WNBA games. I don't care. That's really your prerogative. But WNBA games are lower level competition than Canadian high school boys. That crosses the line. That's just, it's not an opinion at that point. It's just stupid. All right, let's get into it. So, in terms of where we start this, let's start with the athletic bigs. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about Ulrich Comche, and Daron Holmes has been everywhere in terms of like the players that we've been talking about, right? There's a lot to like here, right? And then Kel'el Ware. I think a lot of people are very drawn to Kel'el Ware because, again, in theory, someone like Kel'el Ware, just like someone like Alex Sarr, just like someone like James Wiseman, presents theoretical upside. Like you look at them and maybe on a good day, or maybe on a good play, you see them sprint and block a shot, and you're like, oh, wow, I wonder if he ever learns to do that for a full quarter, or I hope he ever learns to do that. What if he gets really, really motivated when he gets to the NBA? See, here's the thing. I don't like prospects with motor questions. I also don't like prospects with impact metric questions. I also don't like prospects with work ethic questions. These are three things that I do not like to mess around with in the draft, because if you have issues with work ethic at high school and college level, I struggle to understand how you are going to correct those at the NBA level. Um, Predictive analysis is really hard when it comes to prospects. There's a reason why the Toronto Raptors are really, really, really good at drafting, and there's a reason why there are a lot of teams that basically never draft well. Um, Drafting well is half picking the right person, half putting them in the right situation and keeping them accountable, right? So I believe that the Toronto Raptors have an excellent, you know, place for prospects to develop now. I believe like the culture is great, the coaches are great, the development staff is great, the facilities are great, the team is great. The 905 is questionable at times, but can be, better, and has proven to be successful at times. So you do have the framework to bring people in. And so you think to yourself, why not swing on a prospect like Ulrich Komche, right? A guy who has 7 feet, he has a plus wingspan, he has athletic potential and size. Couldn't he become, in an ideal world, couldn't he become, some muted version of Joel Embiid or something like that? What about Khalil Ware? Like, in a hypothetical world, couldn't he become like a really like fluid version of DeAndre Jordan? You know, or Deron Holmes, even. I've heard some people compare him to Miles Turner, even Pascal Siakam. Here's the thing. Um, among among these three players specifically, I would rank them as follows: Deron Holmes, pass, and pass. I'm not super duper high on Deron Holmes. There's a couple reasons why I like him a lot. There's a couple reasons I don't love him a lot. I'll give you both. Um, his analytics do not look extremely promising given the level of competition he was playing at Dayton. So I'll give you that as a negative. There wasn't a steady improvement, although there was a steady progression to being more of a type of player that you would want him to be. So from freshman to junior year, there was a lot more three-point shooting, volume, etc., and he was remarkably efficient. But he's not exactly like a great shooter from other places. Touch around, the basket, free throw line, etc., is not like super promising, but he shoots like crazy percentages from three on half decent volume for a big. Um, Screening is great. So the screening is great, the roll potential is great, and the upside as a shot blocker is pretty damn good. So, there's a lot more to like about him than not like about him. What I don't love about him is his movement, like his overall movement patterns, fluidity, and athleticism do not strike me as like, so I just as a let's say like a hypothetical, thought experiment. Not a hypothetical, it's just a thought experiment. I went back and I watched Pascal Siakam at New Mexico State, and I watched Miles Turner in college. And just as I was watching Deron Holmes, and I was like, let me see what those guys look like in college. Let me see like how they moved around the court. Let me see like what force they were playing with. Um, and let me see how they stood out compared to the competition. And I tell you, those guys looked a lot better than him. Um, and I mean, this is just to say Pascal was mocked like 45th before the draft. So you're not going to find a perfect prospect in a weak draft after 20. It's just not possible. You're going to find guys with big, big holes, guys with huge holes. You're going to find a guy with, questionable shot. You're going to find a guy with a questionable athletic profile. You're going to find a guy who can't shoot. You're going to find a guy who didn't measure well. Because frankly, if you were like some can't miss prospect, you'd be a top 5 pick in this draft. That's just a fact, right? There's no Zachary Risachet level prospect in the 20s in this draft. So I'm sorry to tell you. Even someone like Yves Misi, who is super raw and just picked up basketball 3-4 years ago, could be a lottery pick in this draft by virtue of the fact that the draft is just so freaking weak at the top that the cream will rise, right? So the best of the middle will rise to the top and create a new top. And so the middle becomes the middle of, overlooked prospects. And, so you see a guy like Koloko, and you could imagine Koloko going, 19th or 20th in every single draft for the last 35 years. Someone like him, um, different faces, different names, I mean, shit, there are drafts where guys like him went top 5. Many. There are drafts in which, before we woke up to the realities of motor questions that a big like Khalil Ware, with his shooting potential and his measurements and his fluidity as an athlete, would probably go top 5, top 6 in a lot of drafts. I don't want Khalil Ware on the Raptors. Now we come up to Ulrich Kamche, Cameroonian big. Um, big big history with the Raptors and Cameroonian bigs. We've picked Christian Koloko, we picked Pascal Siakam. So why not, go for the trifecta? Pick another one. And I'll tell you, a big reason why I got really sold on Pascal Siakam and Christian Koloko as prospects, even if I wasn't completely sold on Pascal Siakam as a prospect. And, at the time, I don't have any public record of my takes or whatever, but I was like, wait and see. I wasn't like, yes, we got the guy. I was very much wait and see with him. With Christian Koloko, I was like, yay, we got the guy. A lot of it came down to what their broader basketball goals were and what I feel is like the love of the game clause, right? The Michael Jordan love of the game clause. Here's the thing. There are a lot of big players who are pushed into basketball for whatever reason, because they just don't like it. They don't like basketball. They don't love basketball. Right now, I'm not here to say Ulrich Kamche doesn't love basketball. I'm just telling you a lot of players who played in the NBA don't love basketball. It's just fact. It's just fact. I mean, does everyone in your office love their job? No. It's a job for some people. It's like love for another person. It's their passion. So the question comes to this. And this is a very, very inexact way of measuring how much someone cares about basketball. But, you know, these prospects do these interview rounds, right? Where they go around talking to various podcasters and they talk to draft experts and they talk to scouts and whatever. They'll eventually, they'll do team workouts, they'll talk to general managers, etc. Here's something that I look for that maybe you might want to look for too as you're looking for these prospects. I look at what makes them smile. Now, that sounds really stupid. That's probably sounds like the stupidest thing you ever heard. But think about it in your own life. If someone asks you about your favorite childhood memory, doesn't it make you smile a little bit? If someone asked you about your trip to Disney World, wouldn't it make you smile a little bit? It might make you smile a little bit more than that detention you had or the time you got in trouble for, stealing marbles or something like that. Wow, I'm old. Stealing marbles? What the hell, right? So I listened to 3 different Ulrich Kamche videos, and it's funny. There's an African prospect in next year's draft from Sudan, and Ulrich Kamche and him did an interview like back to back with Gold Awade. I got to tell you, the kid from Sudan whose name I'm forgetting right now, but he's gonna be a lottery pick next year. My my charts went off with this guy. Like, when he was talking, I was like, "This guy is gonna make it somehow," and these interviews are from a year ago. They're from, like, um, Basketball Africa, and I was just like, "This guy's gonna make it." Like, he's figured out his basketball destiny, and it's nice to see him being mocked in the lottery next year. And with Ulrich, I don't know if it's a English thing. It could be. It could be, because he speaks 6 languages, right? So maybe this is one of those things where this is being his 6th language. He's learned it 5 years ago. Maybe he's not able to express himself correctly, and that's always what makes foreign prospects so hard to gauge. But a smile is a smile. And what makes him smile? Thoughts of soccer, Call of Duty, playing video games. Um, these things stand out to me. He's very raw. He is extremely raw. And for a player who picked up basketball 5 years ago, he's too raw. He's too raw for me. At this stage, his screening is very sloppy. There's a lot of late reactions to things. And so look, man, if you're 7 feet tall and you have this type of athletic potential, he's already stated he's the only tall person in his family. There's not like 4 brothers where it's like the Bull, situation, or the Thon Maker situation where there's 4 cracks at whoever's going to become the multimillionaire in the family. you got to protect your family. You got to go, and you got people that are invested in you and have put money into you. I mean, this is not just a this is not an African prospect thing. This happens in poorer countries in Europe. This happens in poor cities in the United States where you see a guy, he's really tall. You put a basketball in his hand and you tell him, okay, this is what I want you to say. An example, by the way, this is an example. This is from a book about it's from the guy who wrote Moneyball, whose name I'm forgetting right now. But the first chapter was about Daryl Morey and how he vetted out this draft prospect. I think his name was Satnam Singh, if you remember the Indian prospect with he was 7'2", 7'3". He was very big. And they asked him, like, who do you see yourself as in the NBA? And he said Yao Ming and Shaquille O'Neal. And that's when they knew he didn't get it. Like he didn't know himself as a prospect. He hadn't spent enough time. And there is a difference. So look, I'd be very pleasantly encouraged and surprised if Ulrich Komche comes in and he is really good. Maybe he is Serge Ibaka, man, but I remember watching Serge Ibaka draft interviews way back when, and I could tell you, like from watching him play, to watching his growth, to listening to him talk, that he had really, really developed like a serious love for basketball, and I'm not seeing that here. So I understand the potential. I understand the Cameroonian, connection of the roots of the Raptors keep drafting Cameroonians, but I got to tell you, man, Christian Koloko loves basketball. I'm not sure if Ulrich Komche loves basketball. I'll be very, very happy to see more. He competes very hard. I'll give you the pros too. He's a really, really active defender. He's not a good defender though. He's an active defender, which means that he tries very, very hard on the basketball court. Trying hard doesn't necessarily equate to what you would think it would equate to in the NBA. See, because when everybody else becomes as big and as athletic as you're no longer the most athletic player on the court, and all those advantages that you think you're making up for. He gives me a lot of Bruno Caboclo vibes. I'm not gonna lie to you. He gives me a ton of Bruno Caboclo vibes, and it's like an aloofness to how he approaches things and how he reads things on the basketball court that kind of gives me some scares. So I'm not sure if the Raptors meet him and watch him play that they're going to be like, yeah, this is the guy. There's a theory that because you are young and because you're a young team and because you have this great development staff and because um, you know you have time, like Scotty and RJ and Emmanuel quickly, etc., are still so far away from being contenders, right? Like I think they're 2-3 years away, but some people think they're like 4 or 5 years away. So you technically have the chance to take a really, really big swing on a player, and if he works out, yeah, man, like athletically alone, he could be great. Um, but I don't think he's gonna be as good as Bismack Biyombo. I'm being very real with you. I don't. But if he is, I'll eat my words, but I don't think so. Let's move on to small, older bigs. That's Tristan da Silva and Oso Iguodaro. Took me a really long time to stop calling him Osho, but it is Oso Iguodaro. Here's the thing. Neither of these guys offer a tremendous amount of shot blocking, but one of them does offer a tremendous amount of shooting, and that's Tristan da Silva. Um, with Oso, what appeals to me is some of his parallels, minus the shooting, with Jonte Porter and how well Jonte worked. Now, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. The Raptors have two bigs who have, some of the playmaking chops that you desire out of a big. Like the Raptors do often run some sort of action where they put the ball in the big man's hands, whether that be Scotty when he's playing in a really small ball lineup, whether that be Kelly, whether that be Jakob, and they kind of put it in the middle of the floor, right around the nail area or the elbow area, and then just ask that guy to create. And he's sort of like really good in those areas, like as a playmaker, as a screener, as a roller, as a and as a guy in that floater range. Tristan da Silva is a completely different animal. A lot of shooting, a little bit more speed and athleticism, and more of like a mobile big, right? So I don't know. I expect Tristan da Silva to be around the 19th pick, right? Like I expect him to go somewhere between 16 and 22. Um, I'll tell you, the analytics on him are also like pretty decent, but not great. So there's that thing where, he has this positional versatility where maybe he can be, a really, really big wing in a huge lineup, or maybe down the line when he gets a little bit stronger, he can be like a really mobile center in a really small lineup. He is a little bit older. He's 23 years old, and that's something. He's not a super athlete, so there's like, there's no like big blocks and big burst. He's not a super great rebounder either. So he's just kind of like a utility forward. Who he reminds me of actually? Some people might find this accurate. Jorge Garbajosa. This is not a comparison I've seen anywhere, but watching him play, there was a little bit of Jorge in him, and just a really smart player. Off ball defense, on ball defense. He just really gets basketball. He understands angles, he understands like angles on a screen. He understands how to relocate. Dude, I watch a lot of basketball players be real stupid like over the last couple years. So, I mean, to understand to watch a guy who just really sort of seems like a student of the game and really, here's the thing: unless you're a genius, there's no way to learn the game this well without being really passionate about it. Passion translates, no matter how you put it. Passion really translates, right? So, yeah, that's really what I like about him. Now moving on to the shot creators, and that's Pacom Dediet. I believe that's how Dediet. There's Bob Carrington, and then there's Nikola Jurisic. So I really like. I don't know how to rank these guys, other than to tell you I like Bob Carrington the most, and we can talk about all of them. So in Pacom, I feel like there is a point guard trapped in a small forward's body who doesn't necessarily do point guard stuff well. Who does that remind me of? A little bit of Delano Banton, actually. He's just a much better shooter at this stage than Delano Banton. He's also younger than Delano Banton was coming out of Nebraska. He was a lot older. There is a little bit of Delano Banton in his game, man. Like there's a little bit of that slash into the mid range stuff from him. I think some of the stuff that he doesn't do well is kind of the stuff that we can teach him to be really good at. What you can't usually teach players is how to be 6'8" with his coordination and his shot making and his, fluidity as a player. Like he has a lot of like really positive qualities, um, in terms of like just understanding the game as well. He is like really turnover prone right now. But he has like a decent vision. Like he said himself in an interview recently that he grew up playing point guard, that was his first skill. I also like that he had an older brother who plays in the French league. Like I believe he plays in FIBA and for the Ivory Coast, if I'm not mistaken, I remember that correctly. I mean, it's usually a good sign when a guy has an older brother who plays basketball because I don't know. I know this may seem kooky to some people, but younger siblings who had to play against older brothers tend to develop better habits when it comes to basketball. Um, yeah, I mean, he has a really positive wingspan. I think he could be like really interesting as a positionally like fluid defender, maybe as a 2-3-4 type of guy. We all know the Raptors like these guys. So there is like a lot to like there. And the guard skills make it like extra. So yeah, the question will be 3-point shooting, right? But I think he can shoot it. Like I think he'll have like that potential. And so, if he shoots it really, really well in workouts, expect him to go well above 19, right? And if he doesn't, expect him to drop to the second round. Like I think that could be a really huge swing skill for him. I don't really find him to be like some sort of like bursty or super elite athlete, but he's fluid, he's functional, and he makes sense. Jurisic is like really interesting to me because of his handle and his extreme vision for like making the right play. It may not necessarily translate like as flashy passes, but it more often than not, it's about like reading the court really, really well in terms of how he attacks things. Like, um, I'll give you an example actually. So I was watching a play with one of the point guards in this draft, and no, 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 no. It was a big. So it was, God damn it, it was Deron Holmes, and it was the point guard, whoever his point guard is, and there was a pick and roll in which Deron Holmes gets like wide clear, and he's got like a real nice angle. And if that point guard had just had the presence of mind to back up like one foot, he would have been able to throw the pass. Unfortunately, he goes right into the center who's like got his arms outstretched and he loses the passing angle. And my only thought was Nikola Jurcic would have made that pass in his sleep. Do you know what I mean? Like there are certain subtle things where, a slight manipulation, a slight, half step here, this craftiness, we have seen this be very, very effective in the NBA. And I'm not saying he is going to be Luka Doncic. I'm not saying he's going to be Nikola Jokic or anything like that. That's not the comparison here. But he has something about his game that is extremely vibrant and functional for an NBA player. Finally, Bob Carrington, you know, I find myself mesmerized watching this guy play basketball, and that's very weird because last year I was shitting all over Keontae George. This is not my type of player, but I like him, and I don't understand why that is. I think he measured in about 6'3", 3/4. I believe that was barefoot. 6'7", 6'8" wingspan, so pretty good size. He reminds me. Do you know who he reminds me of? He reminds me a little bit of Emmanuel Quickly, actually. Um, like a slightly bigger Emmanuel Quickly, like not that much bigger than Emmanuel Quickly, by the way. Just an FYI to people who can keep calling Emmanuel Quickly undersized. He measured 6'2", barefoot at the draft combine with a 6'8" and 1/4 wingspan. That's not too far away from where Bob Carrington measured at six. I mean, it's about 2 inches taller, Bob Carrington, but nevertheless, like he's not some super elite defender, but he thinks he can defend. But his shot creation and his ability to just attack attack defenses, pull up in the mid range. Like I think like he has like some really special skills. And I thought it was really ironic that he compared himself to DeJounte Murray because my thought was, damn, like he does have some DeJounte work, DeJounte Murray. The one thing that, a lot of people criticize about him, is, apart from, threes out the catch, is his finishing around the rim. He didn't finish too much around the rim, a little too jump shot reliant, et cetera, et cetera. But also, like, look at the guy, right? Like he is 18 years old. He's playing in a pretty packed conference. He's obviously not very physically developed, right? Um, it's that's why I said the Emmanuel Quickly comparison really rings true. If there's anything the Toronto Raptors have shown over the last year under Darko Rajakovic is that they can fix this very easily. This finishing around the rim stuff, every player from RJ Barrett to not so much Scottie Barnes. RJ Barrett got better at it. Emmanuel Quickly got better at it. OG Anunoby got better at it. This is something that they worked on all year with every player. And if that's his big glaring weakness, he will be a steal at 19. He's creative. He knows how to manipulate the defense. He knows how to draw a second defender. I feel he'll be able to get to the line in the NBA. He's crafty. He's crafty and he's very aggressive. So that is really just a preliminary overview of the players that I really like in this range. This is not a comprehensive list. This is every single player that I could possibly imagine the Raptors drafting. But these are some of the player types that I think will be available. Now, I think there's a combination element here of like, what do you draft? Now, whoever you draft, most likely both these players are going to spend at least half the season next year in the G League. One of them is probably going to be a two-way contract. The other guy is probably going to be bouncing in and out of the G League because, hell, if Gradey Dick went down to the G League, you're definitely going down to the G League as the 19th pick. So that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. But I would like these two players to somehow complement each other and to be able to work off of each other. Maybe I have like a Dirk Nowitzki, Steve Nash, fantasy in my head of like get two guys that come in together, work together, push each other, and then take over the league, like Fred and Pascal kind of thing, but not really. It does help if two guys have complementary skill sets because they're going to be spending a lot of time playing together. First, they're going to play on the 905. Then eventually they're going to play, off the bench for you in your second unit. So it would help if they played well together and had complementary. So maybe not drafting the same type of player twice might be helpful. i.e., drafting Scottie Barnes, Delano Banton, and David Johnson as 3 big point guards, all in the same draft. Like they never really had any click potential. None of them could really shoot, so they didn't have any chance to play together. It's just a weird. I understand it in a sense. Like I would fully understand drafting 3 7-footers who all can't shoot. I get it, but at the same time, it's like team building is about balance. So one way that you could do it is you go with an excellent pick and roll ball handler and an excellent pick setter. So in this case, you would combo it with Bob Carrington at 19, right? And if you are so inclined, right, one of Deron Holmes or Ulrich Komche at 31, or or you go Oso at 31 and you fill your shot blocking need somewhere else, right? Now, I'm not like married to this idea of you have to get these 2 guys who play well together. But again, 2 rookies coming into the league together, it would help if they could work off of each other, that they have some sort of complementary skill sets, they can play with each other. Maybe that they both have a weakness in the same area, like they're both weak shooters. They can push each other. I don't know. Maybe this is not as relevant as I think it is, but somehow I think it's relevant. You know what I mean? Like there's like some sort of identification, or like where you can come out together and have that immediate thing in common. Um, I mean, ideally, you want the thing in common to be we both love basketball a lot, but the 2 prospects who are overlooked, the 2 prospects who are like undrafted second round, type of guys, the two. I mean, shit. Like the New York Knicks have 3 guys from Nova. You know what I mean? Like they have a lot in common, not just the fact that they're from Villanova, but like they really get along with each other. So I think if you want to keep that chemistry going, you draft guys who kind of fit into your locker room, and I think all of these guys have elements of fitting into the locker room. You could also go with a guy like Juricic um, and Khalil Ware. Like, I mean, I don't know, Khalil Ware is going to end up, but some combination of these guys. So what you would not want to do necessarily is go for Peckham and Bub, together. Although, you know what? I can get behind that too. Any combination of these players works. I stand corrected. Boom. Scratch the last 2 hours. Scratch the last 2 minutes of me ranting about fit. No, I think I would just like to not have complete overlap between the 2 players. As in, I don't want to pick the 2 players who are like incompatible together. But the truth is, all of these players, one of their maybe their biggest gifts is they're all compatible. If all of these players played on the same team, it would be a pretty interesting freaking team. You have this raw athletic defender, you have a stretch big, you have this roll big who has the potential to stretch out. You have like this playmaking forward, and you have this stretch big wing guard forward type guy in Tristan Da Silva, who's super smart with the basketball. Both these guys are actually really smart with the basketball. And then you have like these 3 shot creators. Man, did I just create the greatest G League team of all time? Probably. Anyway, I think all these prospects have like something, intriguing. I just think with varying degrees of bust potential, right? Every player on this list could be nothing. All of them. I think we have to be humble enough to realize that as much as we want to say this guy's can't miss, nobody's can't miss. In this range, absolutely. Like in any range, frankly, no one is can't miss. But I think that you hedge towards the player who has shown you that they don't have issues getting themselves motivated on the basketball court, a person who likes to compete, a person who likes to work, a person who has bigger basketball dreams than simply making it past their first contract. I mean, shit, like how many NBA players are literally make the team and that's it? That's the end goal, right? So if that's your end goal, if that's your big basketball goal, then why would you ever work 5 hours? Why wouldn't you just play PlayStation and Xbox? You know what I mean? Like I look at a guy like DeAndre Ayton, and it's just not to harp on DeAndre Ayton and all my dominating jokes, right? But you look at a guy like that and you say you went first overall. You look at a guy like James Wiseman. Obviously, these guys worked very, very hard to get to the point that they were such high lottery picks. People didn't draw their name out of a hat. They were really good. They were really good high school players. And it wasn't just because they were big, like they worked at it. They had skill, like they worked hard, right? But the question then becomes is like once you get that first paycheck, what's your motivation for your second paycheck? You know what I mean? Not everyone is relentlessly greedy about money. Not everyone is wanting $300 million. And quite frankly, I don't necessarily even want to draft a player whose entire end goal is money, because there are plenty of ways to make money. We'll not talk about Jonte Porter when I say that. I think I want a player whose end goal is to play the game that they love. Does that sound really floofy and kind of romantic and really weird? Maybe, but I think that it's important. I think that it's important that RJ Barrett and Scottie Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly seem to be addicted to basketball. I think that's really important. I think that it's really important that Kelly Olynyk loves basketball. You know what I mean? That love part, I mean, I don't know how to measure it. I don't know how to open up your chest and pull out your heart and see, is your heart beating for basketball? But it has to mean something to you. This game has to mean something to you. Competing at the highest level has to mean something to you. Like actual competition, like wanting to beat your opponent has to mean something to you. This can't just be like an excursion. Like you cannot approach it like the same energy that I approach my, office job. Like it's just that's passionless. And frankly, that does have a way of infecting into your locker room. And it kind of like I don't know, like, it's hard to be around that, you know what I mean? Like, I'm watching the Denver Nuggets right now, and I'm like, "Yo, Christian Brown loves basketball." You can tell. Can't you tell? You watch him play. You're like, "This guy is, like, pumping his chest," and he's just like it's not like, he just loves to compete. He loves to go out there and just push himself, and it's like, when you get a guy like that, right, ironically, DeJounte Murray, I brought him up earlier. Yo, that dude loves basketball. And I watched a lot of DeJounte Murray real early, going back to college um, getting to know a little bit about his family and stuff too. Like it's just basketball is in it's in his life, it's in his heart. Like when he's not hooping, he's thinking about the next time he's gonna hoop. And so, yeah, it's not super surprising that this 27th overall pick became an all-star. You know what I mean? Like, it's not super surprising that he locked himself into a gym. And then, when the Spurs didn't, play him to begin with, and, he was sitting behind Patty Mills and Tony Parker, like he still worked his ass off because he loves it. You know what I mean? If you don't love it and it's hard, you'll quit. That's my philosophy. It's always been my philosophy. And so, yeah, it's really important to me to understand your basketball origin story and your legacy. And prospects are trained to lie. They're all trained to lie. They're all trained to say the same shit that they love basketball, that they fell in love with the game at this and that. Their parents put a ball in their hands when they were 5 years old or whatever. I gotta tell you, that's a really, really big part of it. Like with Gradey. There is no doubt that Gradey Dick loves basketball. He talks about it like when he's talking about all those memories of him blindfolded or like what was he's like shooting in the dark. So he trained himself. He's smiling when he's talking about that stuff. That's a really fond memory. That's not like my parents tortured me to do this so that I could one day pay for the family with my first NBA check. You know what I mean? It wasn't like torturous. You know what I mean? Like this is where I say, parents, don't push your kids into professions that they don't want to do. Stop pushing kids to be doctors and engineers when they hate being doctors. I'm sick and tired of, seeing doctors who don't want to be doctors. Same thing with basketball. I'm sick and tired of watching basketball players who seem to not give a shit about basketball. So, that being said, it's possible to be great at no, it's not possible to be great at something that you don't love. I do believe it's possible to be very good at something you don't love, though. It's perfectly possible to be a very good doctor and not love being a doctor, just like it's perfectly possible to be a great basketball player and not really like basketball very much. You just have to like the money and everything and the lifestyle and just have the wherewithal and the maturity and the humility to know that the minute you stop working, those paychecks are going to stop, and you'll find a way. You'll find a way to be a 10-year pro or whatever. You won't be great. You're not going to be Nikola Jokic. You're not going to be Jamal Murray. You're not going to be Scottie Barnes. You're not going to be DeJounte Murray. You're not going to be Trae Young. Like if you don't love basketball, you're not going to be those guys. You'll be Clint Capella. Maybe if you're very lucky, you'll be Clint Capella. At the best case, best case, you'll probably be like you might be Landry Shamet. You know what I mean? Like that's the level you're gonna get to if you're very gifted physically, but you don't love this thing. So that's a really big thing for me. And maybe that's what really stuck out to me about Bob Carrington was just like his eyes really lit up when he was talking about basketball. Like, is that enough? No, of course not. It's not enough. You need to have like the requisite skill set. You need to have the requisite fluidity. You have to have like the wherewithal, the maturity, the right people around you. You have to have, the right measurements to some extent. You got to be fluid. Like if you're a shot creator, like I look at Nikola Jurisic and I'm like, okay, like this shit worked in Europe, like some of the shot creation and stuff, but he's kind of slow, like in terms of, his first step. Is that going to hinder him in the NBA? No shit. Of course it's going to hinder him. He's going to have to get a lot stronger. I have no doubt he's going to be successful, though. In some capacity, I believe he'll be successful. But it's perfectly possible to love the game of basketball a lot. Mario Hezonja loved basketball. I don't think most people would consider him to be a very successful basketball player. I remember watching him when he was very, very young, like 16 years old. Eh, Never seen someone who loved basketball as much as him. Um, it's also possible to say that people change. That maybe you love basketball and then you don't love it anymore. Like maybe being away from your family, playing professionally, playing on the bench, your coach, playing in a new city is just going to burn you out. But I don't want to walk in with somebody who's just kind of lukewarm about basketball and then try to sell them on why they need to love it. So maybe that's it. Anyways, got 54 comments here. Let's get to some of them. Adam Bona has shades of Clint Capella in him, in my opinion. Cool. Mel saying Poeltl is a solid big in this league. Thank you, Spurs fans. I mean, I think Spurs fans are saying thank you, Raptors, but sure. Beckham's so underrated, only 18 years old. I know an 18-year-old on my hallway. Doesn't mean he can play in the NBA, but I get what you're saying. Dunn, maybe another Thibault. Interesting. Do we really need another ball handler? Yes. Told you Carlton Carrington is the GTJ replacement. I think he can be better than Gary Trent Jr., bro. I really do. I really do. The younger brother theory. Facts. You think they're going for centers while paying Yak 20 million? Here's the thing. I actually wouldn't mind drafting a center for the simple fact that you do have Jakob Poeltl, at least for the time being, unless he gets traded, which he might get traded. I don't know. Maybe I heard something. Maybe I didn't. Jakob Poeltl, Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, right? You've got like guys who are veterans but not so old that they're completely detached. Does that make sense? Like there's no better mentor for an 18 or 19-year-old than a 27 or 28-year-old. It's just perfect. It's like you're not quite putting you're not putting a 38 or 39-year-old you're and you're not putting a superstar who's aged out like a Vince Carter in his later days, in which case the guy is just fanboying over him. Like, no, like the guy like Thaddeus Young is like the perfect mentor. A guy like Garrett Temple is a perfect mentor for 23 and 24-year-olds, sure. But for a guy who's like 18 or 19 coming into the league, having a guy like Bruce Brown who's won a championship and, has carved out a career for himself as maybe not being a super high pick. I think if there's some elements of if he can do it, I can do it-ness, like a model, like a real role model. Like none of these guys are super high lottery picks. I mean, Jakob Poeltl was a high lottery pick per se, but he wasn't like some sort of like he was picked high because he became like a really good college basketball player. He wasn't picked high because he was James Wiseman or Anthony Edwards or LaMelo Ball. You know what I mean? Like I think these guys are really good examples of a very improbable but very desirable median outcome for all draft prospects, which is serviceable role player who makes a lot of money as a serviceable role player. Jakob Poeltl, um, I would say he's technically exceeded, barely, but he has exceeded the average outcome for a ninth overall pick. Not by much, but he has. Not like the average ninth overall pick is probably a bust. I believe if I go down NBA draft history, he'd be better than the average player picked at his position. And he's still in the league, like 8 years later, he's still in the league. So, I mean, that's in itself, like he's beating all the outcomes and he'll probably still be in the league 4 years from now. So, again, he will have a long career. He will have made, over $150 million to play basketball in his life. That is success for a lot of people. When you take like a guy like Khalil Ware and you say, hey, let's stick with this Jakob guy and 150 to 200 million dollars could be yours if you emulate his career. But hey, like, you're also bouncier, more athletic, and you can shoot, so maybe you can outshoot him as well. Like, you can have a better career than him. I just think it creates a solid foundation for how does he eat, how does he rest, how does he take care of his body, how does he operate off the court, what does he do and not do when it comes to women, things of this nature. I think it's good to have like guys who are relatively close to you in terms of age and not so old that they kind of remind you of your parents who you already probably don't respect, to some extent. Also, there was I can't remember who coach who said it, but there was a coach who said this. I think it might have been UConn's coach. He said, or maybe it was Don Staley at South Carolina. It was one of them who said, one of the things that we look for in all the recruits is, do you respect your parents? Because if you don't respect your parents, you're not going to respect us. Really random, but also very valuable insight. I really like Jared McCain. So do I, but I think he's going to go a little bit higher than 19. Maybe they plan on trading Jakob to Memphis for pick number 9. Maybe Brown and Boucher to Portland for their seconds. I think 34, 35. John, I think as tempting as it is to stack your entire roster with a whole bunch of draft picks, I don't think that's happening, man. But there is one pick I believe that will be available, and that's Sacramento's 13th overall pick. I believe that would be very much in play. Talk to my boy Leo about whether or not they would do that trade for Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes in order for the Raptors to move down. And what I didn't realize was they're somewhat restricted in what they can offer Malik Monk. So Malik Monk is probably leaving Sacramento because he's probably going to get more money than they can actually pay him under the new CBA. It's the same situation as the OG Anunoby thing, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll have to check in on that. But yeah, Mr. Z saying Kawhi wanted out of Spurs, had to trade him. The Raptors took advantage of that. I think we did too. Here's really hoping Ding Pate that can enter this draft and we can trade Brown to move up and get him. If he enters this draft, he's going top 5. Guaranteed. I'm very, very positive in that. At his age, in this draft, with his potential, if the NBA allows him to enter this draft, he will go top 5. One player that I was very, very high on in my first mock draft, I took him first. It's nice to see the NBA world continuing, or at least warming up to him again, and that is Zachary Risache. I'm pretty sure if I had the first overall pick, it would be very, very hard for me not to pick him first. Combine measurements were very interesting. We talked about it a little bit in the last one. Let's talk a little bit about the playoffs, and then we'll end this live on that. So yesterday, the Pacers blow the shit out of the New York Knicks. That leaves that into a game 7. And today we've got Thunder Mavs, and the Mavs have a chance to close it out at home in game 6. If they don't do that, the NBA will get another game 7, which means the NBA will get 3 game 7s in 4 series. And the only series you didn't get the game 7 in was when Donovan Mitchell went out of an already completely lopsided. Wow. So every time they could get a game 7, they got a game 7. I don't mean to stoke the conspiracy theory flames, but holy shit, this is good for business, isn't it? Yes, it is good for business. Yeah. So that's interesting. I don't, however, think, my girlfriend was like, hey, every single time a team had to had a chance to close it out in 6, they didn't, and always went to game 7. So that's why this game's also going to go to game 7. And I said, yeah, but there's one thing that's different. The teams that didn't close out were the road teams. Denver was the road team in Minnesota when they didn't close out. New York was the road team in Indiana when they didn't close out. Here, Dallas will be the home team with a chance to close out, and that is a completely different equation. Dallas does not want to go back to OKC. However, I don't believe that this is a wrap for the OKC Thunder at all. I believe this game fully could go to game 7. Mel saying Pascal led the Pacers to game 7. Okay, it's going to be very, very hard for me to not say it this way, so I'm just going to say it this way. That was not a competitive game from the New York Knicks. They did not have an ounce of energy in that game. they got blitzed, okay? And I'm just saying it that way because that's just a fact, okay? They are down numbers massively. Josh Hart leaves the game, they are down even more numbers. There's just not a hope. This is a war of attrition. I think people are getting hung up on, who blew out who. Well, the same Knicks team blew out the Pacers in the Garden in Game 5. Are we talking about that? I just like Ross 101 saying OG listed as questionable uh for game 7. I don't think he's playing for game 7, bro. I don't think he's playing for game 7. I would love for him to play for game 7 because that's a wrap for the Pacers. And I think the Pacers have despite my early proclamation that they were going to lose no matter what, whether they're going to lose in 5, lose in 4, lose in 6, and lose in 7, they were going to lose. I just didn't feel like the Pacers had what it took to beat the Knicks. Well, now the Knicks are so undermanned that if Josh Hart's abdominal injury is anything of concern, yeah, the Knicks are vulnerable. Um, gosh, what else? I'll give you my predictions. For this round and next, I take OKC to lose um either in 6 or in 7. I think Dallas is fully capable of beating them in OKC if it comes to that. I just don't know if Dallas is going to have that urgency tonight. You know what I mean? Like there's like something Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr talk a lot about, which is appropriate fear. And I don't know if Dallas has an appropriate fear of anybody at this point. So maybe they drag the series out, go to game 7, you know what I mean? Or maybe they have the momentum because they do after the last game. Frankly, Dallas has won almost every single game of this series. Like even the game that they lost where they missed all those free throws, they should have won that game. They definitely should have won that game. They just missed free throws. So, apart from they just have an advantage. They have a massive advantage. So for them to lose tonight would be shocking. But if they do lose tonight, they will win in OKC. So I picked Dallas on that game. I also picked Denver tomorrow. Despite the fact that they got blown out by 45 points in the last game, which seems false. Just saying it out loud, 70 to 115. That the score is tattooed on my brain. I still believe that Denver is the better team, that they have the best player, that they have the better complementary pieces, and that when they dial up their focus and their energy, which they will in a do or die game, that they are very, very, very hard to stop. And then New York, of course, I take New York at home against Indiana, but that is the one that I feel the least certain about. Partially because of how sneaky good Indiana's bench has been at times, especially with TJ McConnell and the pressure that they put. How much trouble Aaron Nesmith is giving Jalen Brunson. I think that's relevant. And also how undermanned the Knicks are. Healthy Knicks team. This is no contest, no question ever. The one thing that I will say is that it's very, very hard to beat a team on the road for game 7. The adrenaline, the crowd, the push, the urgency, the red alert. If you beat a team on the road in game 7, you deserve to win. And so I will have, no shade towards the Indiana Pacers other than to tell you they're going to get smoked in the next round. If whoever faces Boston is probably going to lose. But if the Knicks can get healthy, they're not going to get Mitchell Robinson back. That's a big loss because that would have been a walking matchup nightmare for the very suddenly small Boston Celtics. Not very small. I mean, Luke Cornett's a pretty big dude. Al Horford's a pretty big dude, but they're smaller without Kristaps Porzingis. So if they get Kristaps back, it's easy pickings to the NBA Finals for the Boston Celtics. But I do believe the Knicks will give them a more physical series that will leave them more battered and bruised. But I do believe, weirdly enough, that the Boston Celtics are vulnerable. They are still way better than every team they'll face. And I believe, regardless of which guard they face, whether it's Jalen Brunson or Tyrese Halliburton, they're going to have the hardest matchup ever with Derek White and Drew Holiday. And, but it's just that rim protection, element that is really worrying me, and that inconsistent motor, and the fact that they got beat by the Miami Heat last year. And I look at this New York team, I look at this Indiana team, and I'm like, they're fully capable of beating that Miami team that beat them last year. So why not? I know Jimmy Butler goes into this superhuman, thing, but it's not like Jalen Brunson is any less than that. So I don't know. Yeah. In terms of the West, Dallas versus Denver, if that does come to fruition, I have no pick between the two. Obviously, I'll lean Denver. I want Denver to win, but I do believe that Dallas will present a lot of problems. They have athletic players across the board. They will have a massive athleticism advantage. They will. Like with Derek Lively and Derek Jones Jr. and Daniel Gafford, they're so athletic. They're so freaking athletic. And now getting Tim Hardaway Jr. back, and with everything PJ Washington is doing, like they're big. They're big. And if my big swing for that series and even the game 7 is Michael Porter Jr., man. Like if that guy can just get his shit together and be some semblance of something close to what he was in the first round, I think, the Denver Nuggets should win. But he's been averaging like I think 6 points per game over the last 2 games. He's been bad, really bad. Mel saying, honestly, the Pacers should be out of this, but with New York injuries, they got a shot to knock them out on their home court. Yeah. RS saying Boston is beyond vulnerable, and it's because Tatum isn't that guy. He just doesn't take over or handle pressure the way true superstars do. He's too passive by nature. I think he's really good for that team, by committee, right? It's not like Jaylen Brown's some scrub, right? It's not like Kristaps is some scrub. All these guys are high lottery picks. Jason was a 3rd overall pick. Jalen's a 3rd overall pick. Kristaps the 4th overall pick. All these guys were drafted to be franchise cornerstones. And so it helps to have this kind of team around him. When the time comes, will he be able to put up 17, 18 points in a quarter if his team needs it to? I've seen it before. But yes, it's a little inconsistent, but it is very well rounded. There are a lot of guys out there who can put up, 17, 18 points in a quarter, but they can't guard for an entire game the way he does. They can't rebound. They can't, he's underrated as a playmaker. He does a lot of things really well. A lot of the Scottie Barnes comparisons, I understand he's a lot further as a shooter and as a scorer, but a lot of the Scottie Barnes comparisons, do come up with Jason Tatum for his utility as an all-around player. SP saying, how did Michael Redd fall to 43 in the terrible 2000 draft? Probably measurements. I think, that's a fair thing. But yeah, I remember that draft very well. I think I built a website around that draft, 2000, 2001. Yeah, I built a little website. It was like a class project on both those drafts. It was not like an active website. It was like one of those, learn how to build a websites. Wasn't even aware of Michael Redd coming into that draft, man. Yeah. The past has shown us the Celtics shooting themselves in the foot during the playoffs. With Kristaps out, I have no inclination it's going to be deja vu. Yep. Well, history does tend to repeat itself sometimes, but also I think when you get too rhythmically attuned or accustomed to certain events happening, they can catch you off guard. Like for instance, one of the road teams actually pulling out one of these game 7s that are on the line. It would be very rare for that to happen, but it could happen. Minnesota could win in Denver. They are capable of winning. Yeah. If Anthony Edwards gets hot and scores 50 points and Jamal Murray continues to be injured and Michael Porter Jr. continues to be passive and inefficient and Aaron Gordon continues to be sloppy with the basketball, yeah, Nikola Jokic is not alone enough to beat the best defense in the NBA. Like, he could score 50 points and they could still lose. You know what I mean? The other guys have to show up. This is a team sport. It's the same thing with the Knicks. The Knicks can crash the glass and work really hard, but and this is why I say, like, teams like the Boston Celtics and even teams like Denver, to some extent, mailing in performances like this. And with the Knicks, it's more understandable because they're so depleted and so injured that they really do have to preserve their bodies and maybe not fight a fight that they're already out of. Like, I think sometimes in the playoffs, you get hit so hard and you miss so many shots and you make so many mistakes that you realize that there really is no way of coming back into a game, that you could push You can fight, you can close the gap. Like I'm positive that if the Denver Nuggets, once they missed all those easy shots early, they gave up the 20-0 run to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm positive that if they had fought and clawed their ass back, they could have cut that game down to like a 12-point game. I'm positive. Positive. Instead, they lose by 45 because they just don't try. They don't. It's the same thing with yesterday. I'm positive that if the Knicks had really tried, they probably could have closed it to like 5 points or 2 points. But at some point, it was just out of reach. It was 16 and then it became 13, you know? John Hamilton, Ant-Man said in his team interviews he doesn't love basketball. He plays pretty hard and is super skilled. Imagine if he really loved it. I would love to see that interview. I don't seem to remember him saying he doesn't love basketball. He's a. I think I remember an interview with him where he said he just loves playing anything. Like he'll literally like he's just a competitor. So basketball is just the vehicle through which he competes, and I completely get that. Michael Jordan was like that too. Nathan Taylor saying no, he didn't. What the fuck? He said his favorite sport was football. There we go. Yeah, like that's the point, right? So you can here's the thing. I'm not saying like my earlier rant about loving basketball doesn't mean that basketball is like the only like loving basketball is the only way that you can become good at basketball. You have to love some element of it, right? You have to either have to love like the training element or the team camaraderie element or the money element or the lifestyle. You have to love some part of it in order to be successful. And ideally you love multiple parts of it, right? Like, I'm sure, you know, I'm not gonna name a name, but like there's a guy who played for the New York Knicks for a while who really loved being famous and all the fame and notoriety and celebrity that came with basketball. And so he worked his ass off to continue getting that part of it. You know what I mean? Um, Michael Jordan was relentlessly, probably doing the wrong thing technically when it came to basketball. He had long nights of gambling. He just loved to compete. He was just a psychotic competitor. So whether that meant, playing pool, which he would bet on, whether that meant playing golf, which he loves to bet on, whether that meant playing baseball, which he tried to do, whether that means playing basketball, Jordan had that competitive streak. Basketball was just something that he was good at, that he enjoyed getting something really high. It was like, if like again, like if you love to create, does it really matter if you create artscapes or whether you can create soundscapes or whether you create, I'm that person. I'm someone who loves to create, right? Basketball is something that I love as well, but it's something like when I can combine creativity with anything, I'm happy. I'm a happy person. So I'm a filmmaker, I'm a podcaster, but like, I used to paint. I sold paintings when I was younger. So I mean, like, it's whatever angle I can channel my creativity, I would do that and I would love that thing. I didn't love podcasting. I love it now because it's a means of channeling my creativity. You know what I mean? So yeah, I hope we draft Bob Carrington to be our poor man's Jamal Murray. Hmm. Sure. Any thoughts on players to get in free agent unless it's the same team minus Brown, Gary, and whoever we draft? It definitely won't be the same team. I think Malik Monk. Uh, I think Malik Monk would be a really high end target for the Raptors. There are others, and we will definitely cover it when it comes to free agency. Um, but I wouldn't rule out trading for guys who are on existing contracts. Why create new bad contracts when there's so many bad contracts to be traded for? You know what I mean? So, yeah. Anyways, we are past 1 hour. I will catch you guys after the game today. We will do a live today. Some people feel like I ducked yesterday's game because someone texted me. They said, "Are you ducking today's live because Pascal Siakam and the Indiana Pacers won?" No, did not duck it because Pascal Siakam and the Indiana Pacers won. I ducked it because my girlfriend and I started watching a movie, and then I had to debate whether I wanted to quit watching the movie or turn on the game, and I ended up watching the movie. Sorry. I knew what was going to happen. I knew the Pacers were going to win. I'm like, it's going to be another game. It's going to be another game 4 type of situation where the Knicks don't really show up. It's going to be a blowout. Like I called that game the way it was, and I was like, I'm not going to watch it. Who you cheering for? Um, Denver, for sure. You do have weird energy for P. Pascal? No, I don't have weird energy for Pascal Siakam. I have a weird energy for people who tried to tell me for 4 years, 3 years that he was gonna be a franchise player. Personally, I resent all the time that we wasted trying to fit this square peg into a round hole. He was a perfect complementary piece. Um, yeah, and I guess, like, the people who rooted for him or particularly cheered for him are just not my type of people. Malik Monk and Jonathan Isaac as a trade target and a free agent signing would be a dream offseason. Interesting. I support Pantara's Pascal opinion. Yeah, I mean, look, like I thought about it, like what a great story Pascal Siakam is. What a, and what a tremendous, thing. Like I should want this guy to be very successful because I mean, like as a Raptor fan, it's really cool to see a guy who played on your team and is now potentially like one game away from the conference finals. I just happen to like OG so much more than I like Pascal. Like OG Pascal. Like it's like I can root for Pascal against a stranger or like some player who's never played for my team, but I'm not going to root for him against OG Anunoby. And I want to see good basketball. I do. The weird thing about um the Pacers versus the Celtics as a final Eastern Conference Finals, that's not competitive. It's not competitive style of basketball. You have one team that likes to run up and down the court and shoot threes, and you have another team that likes to run up and down and shoot threes. It's just one team is like way, 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 way better than the other team. How's that fun? That's a sweep. I mean, it won't be a sweep because the Celtics aren't serious about life, but like it should be a sweep. You know what I mean? Like, um, the funny is you are becoming the people who thought Siakam was a superstar with Scottie. I don't think so at all. Scottie is so much better than Pascal at the same age. What are you talking about? You are you dumb? You realize that Scottie Barnes became an all-star when Pascal Siakam was basically still in college? What are we talking about here? See, this is what I'm talking about, right? It's you basically. It's you directly, young Mula, you. So like you think that there's an equivalence between these two players. That's what I heard for like 2 years. It's like, oh, if Scottie Barnes tries really, really hard, he'll be like a worse version of Pascal. And I'm like, what are we talking about here? Young Mula, Scottie is the next Aaron Gordon. You're a dumbass. Scottie is already better than Aaron Gordon ever was and ever will be. Okay. Like, I think Aaron Gordon himself, I love Aaron Gordon. I think he's awesome. You really are like next level stupid if you think that. Like, yikes. I mean, Aaron Gordon was asked to those who don't know where young Mula is getting his basketball takes. Um, Aaron Gordon was asked which player would most likely benefit. Which young player in the league is the next Aaron Gordon? Like, who do you see as being like miscast as a first option and could thrive in this role? And he said Scottie Barnes. But you know what's interesting? How many players have compared themselves to Scottie Barnes? Do mental math here. Draymond Green compared himself to Scottie Barnes, right? Aaron Gordon compared himself to Scottie Barnes. You're going to focus on that because you're an idiot. But you know who else compared themselves to Scottie Barnes? You know who said he plays like me? I'll give you a moment to guess. Give me a hint. It's a top 10 player of all time. Do you know who it is? His name rhymes with tragic. Yeah. So Magic Johnson also said the same thing, right? Kevin Durant has had nothing but glowing praise and he thinks he's going to be one of the best players in the league. So it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, I understand where Aaron Gordon was coming from. They were both fourth overall picks. They both have like kind of a shaky offensive package at times. They both struggle with create. Bro, Aaron Gordon was the third leading scorer on a terrible Magic team. He scored less points per game than Terrence Ross. He was not a very good player in Orlando. There's a reason they traded him for what they traded him for. I'm joking. Scottie is better than Aaron, but I was a Siakam non-believer, and you are becoming the people who thought Siakam was a superstar. Be real. You know what I don't like personally? I don't like when people use the term "be real" to justify stupid things that they think. You know what I mean? Like, the earth is flat, be real. No, you be real. Read a book. You know? No, no, come on. Like, we had seen Pascal Siakam for 4 I was not, like, on my soapbox, like, in 2019 saying Siakam can't be a superstar. You know what I mean? He was 25 at that time. Like, you're trying to write off a guy at 22 who has, by the way, like, he has Scottie Barnes might be one of the best 22-year-olds of all time in NBA history. Like, what are we talking about here? It should matter that you're good when you're young, you know what I mean? Yeah, you're right, it doesn't matter. Today's a trolley day. So, young Mula, you got a lot of attention for saying really dumb things, and I think that that just encourages people to say more dumb things, unfortunately. But it is what it is. Um, I'm writing him off. I'm just more realistic. You're on the extremes. What extremes? That was a Freudian slip. No, it's not extreme at all. I didn't say he was going to be the best player in the league, but I did say he might be an MVP someday. So yeah, maybe you think I am extreme. I don't know, bro. Bro, like I think what I said about Scotty 3 years ago, most people considered extreme. I said he was gonna, he was gonna be a rotation player on day one, that, he had a chance to win rookie of the year, that he was gonna be the best player of his draft class. Yeah, people thought that was really extreme. So far it's true. After year two, I said, he has all-star potential in year three. I mean, go back and refresh your takes, bro. This basketball channel. Like, I mean, overall, I would say I've been very right about Scotty for the most part, and you've been probably very wrong about Scotty. So it's interesting to continue saying like I'm still on the extremes. No, you just haven't adjusted your eyes yet, but it's cool. I think Scotty's in for another big step next season, and if he doesn't take one, I'll be very very surprised. I think he has like this one giant leap, and I don't think we've seen it yet. But that giant leap could be, um, it could be right up to top 10 player in the NBA. Jose Calderon, Scotty, a number 2 or number 3 option. I simply disagree. Young Lula, most people around the NBA think Scotty is a complimentary star. For some reason, Toronto fans will convince themselves he is a superstar in the making. Sure, sure. I mean, I agree with you. Most people around the NBA do think that. Um, most people around the NBA thought James Wiseman was a can't miss prospect too. Just saying, people can be wrong. Um, And a lot of people, I think Jason Williams said it best. A lot of people don't watch the Toronto Raptors. You know, who else people thought was a complimentary star after year two, year three? Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Get him some help. He would be so perfect next to this guy. Oh, imagine him next to Kawhi. Now he is like basically Kawhi, right? Um, I don't know. I think people are wrong all the time. Maybe I'm wrong too. I don't know. I'm not so arrogant that I'm going to say like I'm 100% right about Scotty. I was definitely wrong about him in year two, right? I mean, I said that he would take this big leap, and he didn't take it until year three. So maybe I'm wrong about next year. Maybe he takes, a slight step back, and then we see a big bounce back in year five. I doubt it, though. I doubt it. I have some idea of what he went through in year two and all the extenuating circumstances around it. I find him to be very motivated right now. Um, and yeah, I mean, I would take him over any most of, if not all of the guys that are young and up and coming. I just think his upside is huge. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe his shot making and craft and ball handling and shooting is not on the level of some of the guys that you consider to be superstars, but their defense, their basketball IQ, their passing, their strength, their athleticism is not on his level. So it's really, Scotty has to continue to be more assertive to show he's more Jokic than Pippen offensively. It'll be interesting to see if he gets there. Honestly, RS, Scottie Pippen was a superstar. Okay. He was the best player on a 54 win team. He was a superstar. He was first team all defense. He was an all NBA player. he is a top 50 player of all time. If that's not a superstar, I don't know what the fuck is. He was a superstar. I'm tired of people talking about Scottie Pippen that way, number one. Number two, Nikola Jokic is one of the top 15 to 20 players of all time. I would go even higher, but that's because I'm crazy. And also because I'm assuming things that haven't happened yet will continue to happen. That being said, those are two of the top 50 players of all time. So if the choice is between one top 50 player and another top 50 player, and this guy's basically telling me he's a second or third option, I don't know. I want to believe, but I feel like I'm falling for the Siakam trap, which we were told to buy in on. Like, look, bro, like I don't really fucking care. I don't know who you are. What's that old Kawhi thing? I don't even know where you sitting at. You know, like I don't know who the fuck you are. I don't care what you're being sold on. This is not I'm not getting any money from you believing that Scottie's gonna be a star. Frankly, I don't fucking care. Okay. Like I really don't. I'm not trying to be snappy or rude or whatever. I don't fucking care. What do I care? What like, ooh, yeah. I think he's gonna be a 25 point per game scorer, but he ends up being a 22 point per game scorer. Who wins, who loses? I don't fucking care. What do I care, bro? Like live your life. You know what I mean? But this notion of comparing him to Pascal is what's offensive and stupid. If you understand basketball and you compare these two basketball players, check your eyes, bro. It's not, it's what? Where is the comparison? Their feel for the basketball, their feel for the game is completely like it's so different. They are such different basketball players. You would have to be like borderline. I don't get it, bro. I don't get it. It doesn't matter. Like, what will be, will be. He's going to be a superstar, whether I say he's going to be a superstar or you say he's not going to be a superstar. You think he's the next Pascal Siakam, then you're going to be like, you have compared them since he is replacing him. How old are you? Like I'm trying to understand like who I'm talking to here. Like brain wise, I feel like you're operating on a vibration that is like, you know, like not worth addressing at this point. Like he's replacing him. Why? How? What? He's a fucking player on a rookie contract. Pascal Siakam's a guy eligible for a super max. One guy is going in his fourth year. The other guy is going into his ninth year. He has to be a 1-for-1 replacement right now. And by the way, motherfucker, he beat him out for All-Star. He plays in the same conference. What are we fucking talking about? He was 22. The other guy was 28. What? Or 29. What are we talking about? What? Like, why do you people, and you people, yes, you people, a bucket you with Bob McCowan and all these people, why do you feel the need to diminish reality? Why do you feel the need to ignore the season that just happened? Why are you talking like we are still stuck in the last year? You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here? Rob, we at 9.9K subscribers. Hallelujah, bro. Nice. Mel, only the Canadian fan base was Pascal superstar talk. The rest of the world was like, who? Exactly, bro. Nobody brought that shit. Nobody. Nah, Cade not even close. Check his BPM and work with Scottie. Shingun is closest to Scottie. What are we talking about? Where did Cade come into this? Young Mula. Siakam is about to lead his team to the Eastern Conference, by the way, just saying. Young Mula. No one in America thinks Scottie is a star. Stop it. That right there. Commissioner of the NBA. Guy made the All-Star team while being on a losing team. His team is trash. He still made the All-Star team. How many players can you say that about? Bro, what are we talking about here? Ooh. You know, every time you've seen a stupid rule on the road or the highway or at a bar or at a mall or whatever, and you're like, why does this rule exist? It's so stupid. Why does this rule exist? And they say, well, this one time there was this one guy who did this one thing And that's why this rule exists. You know what I mean? Like, it's like one person ruins it for so many people. Young Mula, you are that one person. Straight up. You're that one person. Facts. Why the number one option can't create his own shot, but he can. You know that, right? You're not so stupid. You understand that, right? He can play. He can create his own shot. He doesn't do it as well as Cade. I'll give you that. But he creates for his teammates better than Cade. He generates advantages better than Cade. He operates better in the pick and roll than Cade. He has a better assist to turnover ratio than Cade. None of that matters to you because he doesn't do the Lou Williams stuff. Because you're stupid. You see basketball one way. You have a one-track mind. You see a player that, dominates in the pick and roll as an isolation scorer, like a Carmelo Anthony. You think he's God. Tell me why Carmelo Anthony never made it to the NBA Finals. Tell me why Rudy Gay never made it to the NBA Finals. Tell me why Lou Williams never made it to the NBA Finals. Tell me why Jamal Crawford never made it to the NBA Finals. I'm not saying those are bad players. Those are really good players. But, man, you got to understand, Nikola Jokic didn't exactly hot sauce his ass into advantages either, right? You got to get it, right? Don't drag a dead take down Young Street on a Sunday. Damn, that's some OG wisdom right there, eh? I will come on to debate you soon. Bro, you don't stand a chance. You should read a book first. What are you talking about? Debate me. Debate me? What are we talking about? No. You should go debate some children in a playground and you get cooked. Guaranteed. If those people have watched a basketball game before, if those people even read a textbook on basketball or a coaching textbook or whatever, you get cooked. Straight up. Straight up. Young charcoal. Yo, for real. No, I see a player like Tatum, Jokic, Luka, and Shea get their own shot and set up their teammates. How old are those guys? You think Tatum is some elite shot creator? Come on, man. Get real with yourself. Luka is, yeah. Jokic, I mean, he's gotten there. He wasn't some great shot creator when he came into the league. I'll tell you right now, though, to be completely fair to you, Jokic, Luka, and Shea at the same age as Scottie at 22 after the third year were mildly ahead of him. With the case of Jokic, he was a little bit older. He came over to the league, whatever. But after the third year, all three players you could say were marginally ahead of Scottie. But Scottie's a better athlete than all those guys. And so you have to give some level of advantage here. You can't be comparing apples to apples because you're not comparing apples here. Scottie's development is different. It would be crazy to say he's guaranteed to be first team All-NBA. He's guaranteed to be MVP. This is not as solid an argument as Victor Wembanyama or even Anthony Edwards. It's a more, you have to assume for more stuff going right for Scottie, but that's not to say it can't go right. You had to assume for so many things to go right for Luka and Nikola Jokic, and they did go right. So I'm just saying the upside of Scottie is far, 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 far higher than the upside of Pascal. But will the reality of Scottie be far, far higher? I have no idea. I expect yes. Yeah. It's easier to set up your teammates than create your own, to be honest. No, it's not. No, it's not. Not to the level that you're talking about, not at the level you're talking about. No, it's not. Far more people are capable of getting their own. You think Gary Trent Jr. is the best player on this team? You must. Because he's really good at getting his own shot. Like, Gary Trent Jr. is fucking awesome at getting his own shot. You think he's the best player? If you create your own shot, you get double, therefore leaving your teammate open. Yeah, I wonder how many times Gary Trent Jr. gets doubled relative to how often Scottie gets doubled. That seems like something you should check on Second Spectrum. I'm talking 3-level scoring. Yeah, throwing up a buzzword like 3-level scoring does not mean you know what the fuck you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. Gary Trent Jr. is a better 3-level scorer than Scottie Barnes. What are we talking? You think Pascal Siakam's like some elite 3-level scorer? He's not. Do you even know what 3-level scoring means? I think Scottie is a prospering 3-level scorer. I just don't think he's great on any one level. Like, that's the problem. He's not great at the rim. He's not great from 3. He's not great from mid-range. So yeah, there is some development that needs to come, but man, he has the rest of it. You understand that Kawhi and guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, even though they're much better shot creators right now, they still struggle with double teams. They still struggle at reading the floor. If it's so easy, why don't those guys do it so well? Why doesn't Giannis read the why is Giannis such a not so great playmaker right now? If it's so fucking easy, why is Giannis so great at getting his own shot? Why is he so great at getting in the paint? Why is he so great at getting into the line, but he can't set up his teammates with accurate passes? You think it's so fucking easy? You do it. Come on, man. No, it's not easy. Passing, Scotty's passing, especially at his size and his level and his like the way he advanced passes, like it's a super skill. You don't get basketball, so you don't value it. That's fine. You know, I watch a lot of someone asked me, someone asked in this chat, how did Michael Redd go undrafted? I'll ask you a question. How did Draymond go so late? Or how did Michael Redd go 40th? How did Draymond go so late? How did Jalen Brunson go so late? Because these guys do things that people don't test for. Because everyone's looking for Khalil Ware, everyone's looking for James Wiseman. Those guys never get missed in the draft, right? You never. When's the last time you saw a second round prospect that was like 7 feet tall that could run like a gazelle? It just never happens. Those guys are never successful. Find one. I dare you. Find one. No, you don't find those guys. What you find is late bloomers. What you find is undersized guys who manage to, you find guys who are considered unathletic. You find guys like that. Now, Scottie, in a different world, isn't a top 5 recruit, isn't a top 5 pick, isn't a rookie of the year. He's like a mid first round guy because his offense is so raw. But no, instead he was a top 4 pick in one of the quote unquote one of the best drafts ever, and he's been the best player in that draft class. Put some respect on his fucking name. Anyway, this conversation is exhausting. It's been derailed. I've allowed it to get derailed. Maybe I shouldn't have let it happen. But a debate is a debate nonetheless, and hopefully this was entertaining and interesting for somebody. Although I'm secretly hoping, honestly, that people just tune out right after the draft part and just ignore this troll baiting crap. I do want place for dissenting opinions. I just don't know if I personally have the patience for like idiotic opinions. Anyway, you have to have the mentality to want to be the best in your team and set an example and not be made an example of. I don't know who that's about, but honestly, Scottie said he wanted to be one of the greatest players of all time. And frankly, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but I believe him. All right. Peace out, guys.